Yo, what up, y'all? Thank y'all so much for tuning in, man. I'm just gonna dive right in. So before we jump into the video, man, I have some journalists that's pretty much going to go over the whole entire Call of Duty Activision Blizzard deal, because we all know Xbox is trying to buy Call of Duty to pretty much put it in Game Pass, and Sony is not having that, and Jim Ryan is still crying. That's just the truth. He's still out here crying. That is the biggest pony I ever seen in my life. Okay, and these fanboys are backing him up, and these ponies are defending every little thing that he does wrong. They're telling them that he's doing it right. The way, the donkey of the day is Jim Ryan. Okay, he's over there in UK crying. You know what I'm saying? Trying to lie to these folks and tell them that this is inadequate and this is anti-competitive for Xbox. Now I'm thinking to myself, how is this anti-competitive if you're the market leader? If you're the market leader, you cancel the showcase so that you don't have an argument in court. So Xbox don't have the leverage. You canceled the showcase for Call of Duty, not Call of Duty, excuse me. You canceled it for God of War and Spider-Man 2. You canceled it. So now we're not gonna get no gameplay because this whole entire Call of Duty Activision Blizzard deal. So we're just gonna dive in the video because this is a nice long video. So we're just gonna jump right into it, man. And the journalist is pretty much gonna go over the deal with you guys so you can get a better understanding of what's going down in these gaming streets, and it can pretty much catch you guys up to beat, because I know it's been a lot of like tic-tac, paddock-whack, knick-knack stuff going on, and I know you guys have been getting crossed up in the crossfire like, man, what is really going on behind closed doors up there or over there at UK? So we're just gonna dive right into the video.
Soap opera that is this Microsoft versus Sony battle over who's less of a threat in the industry. That seems to be what this is boiled down to over the Activision Blizzard acquisition that Microsoft is trying to complete. Grab your popcorn. This just continues to get crazy. I'm going to go to Stella first after I set this up for you, and there's a lot of setup. So Xbox has developed a novel tactic for defending its Activision Blizzard acquisition proposal, which continues to wind its way through various regulatory bodies around the world. That tactic: self-deprecation. In response to claims by concerns raised by the UK's Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, Microsoft released a lengthy statement to GamesIndustry.biz calling the criticism, quote, unsupported, and pointing to PlayStation's leading place in the market as a reason why. Here's a quote from their statement. The suggestion that the incumbent market leader, with clear and enduring market power, could be foreclosed by the third largest provider as a result of losing access to one title, meaning Call of Duty, is not credible, Microsoft said. While Microsoft didn't share figures, the company says that if every Call of Duty player on PlayStation consoles switched to Xbox, quote, the PlayStation gamer base remaining would be significantly larger than Xbox. In short, is Sony not vulnerable to a hypothetical foreclosure strategy? Sony is not, pardon me, I read that very wrong. Sony is not vulnerable to a hypothetical foreclosure strategy, and the referral decision, meaning this regulatory body thing, incorrectly relies on self-serving statements by Sony, saucy, which significantly exaggerate the importance of Call of Duty to it and neglect to account for Sony's clear ability to competitively respond. And the statement continues. While Sony may not welcome this increased competition, it has the ability to adapt and compete. Gamers will ultimately benefit from this increased competition and choice. Now, the GamesIndustry.biz piece, as sourced at IGN, continues. As far as the CMA's concerns about the streaming market, Microsoft says it has, quote, no advantage, and says Xbox feels it has, quote, a number of significant disadvantages in comparison to other competitors because of the relatively limited platform support for Xbox cloud gaming. The company also says that adoption of video game streaming is relatively low, I would certainly believe that at this point in time. And that undermining the market in any way would only have long-term damaging effects to its own products. Quote, Xbox as a platform, which is in last place in console, 7th place in PC, and nowhere in mobile game distribution globally, has no incentive to do this. Instead, its incentive is to encourage the widespread adoption of cloud gaming technologies by as many providers as possible to encourage the major shift in consumer behavior required for cloud gaming to succeed. Those were just the excerpts of it. That wasn't even
that's
the whole
so
thing.
much.
There's a lot to chew on. So Stella, what, I guess your immediate reactions, what jumped out at you at that? There's a lot to kind of laugh at, not laugh at, but laugh about.
Laugh with,
this competition that, this supposedly fierce competition between Sony and Microsoft.
Okay, first of all, it's still stupid. But also, I agree that they are definitely, Sony's exaggerating the importance of Call of Duty. It's one game. Like, if we're going to bring this to like a console division, like, it's one game. It's fine. Like, PlayStation will be fine if they don't have Call of Duty. Yes, it will suck for the player base because there are so many players who do play on PS5 and PS4, but I think they'll be fine. As a company and as a platform, they'll be perfectly fine. They have so many other games coming out, like God of War Ragnarok, like other games like that. I mean, they have the whole Uncharted series, which is just now hitting PC, so there are lots of exclusives that they still have. Now, in terms of FPSs, yeah, they could probably expand a little bit and experiment, but this is like a prime time for them to do that because they have so many good story-based games that are exclusive to PlayStation that I think they could branch out a little bit if they wanted to, but even if they don't, they'll still be fine. So it's seeing that, I'm just like, yeah, no, of course, that makes sense. It is very exaggerated. Like, they're not going to suffer because one title's gone.
Yeah, Sony is, they own they have a couple of first-party, first-person shooter IPs that they don't even make, probably because they're happy with the Call of Duty arrangement, and those would be Resistance and Killzone. Like, those have been dormant for years. Those are in Sony's back pocket. Miranda, there's a lot to chew on here.
There is, and one of the things that stuck out for me first was thinking about whether or not in this statement they are considering the PC base, because they sort of lead with saying if we got every Call of Duty player, Xbox would still be significantly behind PlayStation, like it would still be behind them. And I was like, okay, are they counting PC? And based on this statement, I would say no, they're looking purely at consoles, which makes sense because if they are trying to play the console field rather than the PC field, because that is different, and obviously Sony doesn't really have much of a presence there. They are again starting to put their things on PC, but it's very slow going.
Yeah, and it's way after the fact too.
Yeah, it's so long after. So I think with this, it makes sense they're trying to play up genuinely where they are in the market, and it was surprising for me to see them say that like even if they got every single Call of Duty player, they'd still be really behind PlayStation. And it's as Stella was saying too, like Call of Duty's not the only popular game out there. Yes, absolutely it's significant. Yes, absolutely PlayStation has the advantage of having a lot of exclusive deals with Call of Duty. However, honestly, it comes down to, these determining bodies to like look at this and see if that is actually what they care about most of this whole big companies. They're targeting one game, and I think that's a really interesting thing. Obviously, there are a lot of other arguments coming into play here, but this is the one that is most notable. It is always going to come down to Call of Duty, and it's like how much does that actually impact both these systems? And I think. I mean, like, it's weird to say, it doesn't matter what we think, right? Because ultimately there's a bigger deciding board here. But I think Microsoft did make a very good play here in trying to be genuine about where they see themselves in the market. And, we've heard before too, like Phil Spencer was saying, I always think about this quote too, where they don't see their primary competitors as like PlayStation and Nintendo. They're really looking at like Amazon and Google, and they're trying to compete with the cloud. They want to make this this big value proposition for their games beyond just their box, right? And I think we're going to keep saying more and more of this conversation, keep bubbling up as they go to courts with these and keep explaining their position. And I did also see a report that due to current standings of agreements with Activision and Sony, like I don't think Microsoft, let me see where it was.
The Game Pass thing?
Yeah, so I saw it on Forbes actually. We might also have it too, but apparently with this, like the Activision deal, it's like they're blocked from putting Call of Duty on Game Pass for a few years anyway, that sucks. But
yeah,
I mean, that sucks for us. But like it's really interesting because like there are a lot of things still being honored and solved here. And I think this is going to be a long process should this go through anyway. I'm also curious because I don't feel like we have a good timeline on when these things would be decided either. Like, when does this even go through?
Well, as far as we know, we just have the original thing Microsoft told us, which is that they expect the deal to, if approved, to go through by June of 2023.
Right.
So it's we're into the regulatory consideration phase now, but at least if the American government, I don't know about the UK government, is not known for doing for moving things through regulatory approval in a speedy way.
That's true.
They're not known for their expediency. So who knows how long it's going to take. You know, Miranda, I think you touched on one thing that I wanted to drill into a little more about the regulatory bodies and how they can gum this up potentially, which is why exactly what Sony's trying to make happen. And you got to figure, I mean, I guess it's not fair to assume, but I think, let's put it this way, there's probably a reasonable chance, a reasonable probability that the people on these regulatory boards that ultimately have to sign off on this probably have little to no understanding of the video game industry. And I don't say that insultingly, it's probably in a lot of cases outside of their purview, where they're not doing what we do. They're not paying attention day in and day out to who's doing what in the games industry. They're taking, for better or for worse, because there may be some advantages to this too.
Yeah.
They're taking a completely fresh look at it of just like, okay, there's this industry, the video game industry, which generates collectively this many bajillion dollars a year, and this company, Sony's in first, and Nintendo's in second, and Microsoft's in third, but they want to. I mean, I wonder if the $69 billion thing it's just such an astronomical number that I wonder if that's kind of. That alone is giving pause, because the $7.5 billion, only $7.5 billion Bethesda acquisition, none of these regulatory, and including Sony, neither Sony nor any of these regulatory agencies batted an eyelash at the Bethesda acquisition. When 2K earlier this year, way back in January, which feels like 5 years ago, when they paid $12 billion for Zynga, nobody batted an eyelash. I wonder if it's the number, or to your point, Miranda, if it's Call of Duty, if it's the fact that it's the big game that's in play here.
Yes, I feel like if you look at, say, for instance, like the top selling games, if they're like assuming that this regulatory body does not have the biggest understanding of games, they're looking at analogs for, like with movies, television, other places to see, okay, how do video games work comparison? And they see, so if you just look up, so I just pulled up the first website that pulled up for US top selling games of 2021. Okay. It's Statista.com, so thank you for this information. Yeah. Number 1 and number 2 are Call of Duty. Number 1's Call of Duty Vanguard. Number 2 is Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War.
Wow. So the previous year's Call of Duty as well. I guess that makes sense because they come out in the end of October, so it's always going to sell well into the following year, which tells you how big the launches for those games are too. The fact that Vanguard still managed to be the biggest game of the year, even though it came out in late October. Yeah. It came out with 2 months to go in the year. Yeah. So it launches big and then it has a long tail, which is crazy.
And then NPD obviously has its others as well, but basically every list says number 1 is Vanguard, number 2 is Call of Duty. So if you're looking at that list and saying, all right, number 1 and 2, all the video games that come out, that's pretty significant, right? Yeah. And so I could see why they're like, oh, this is the thing to play into. This is the thing to talk about, because yes, Activision Blizzard is more than just Call of Duty, but ultimately Call of Duty is what matters most there, arguably in this court and in this case. So,
Stella, your thoughts on this?
I'm still trying to process the fact that Vanguard did so well, even though that was not like the most well-received game when it came out, you know? So I guess that does speak volumes as to Call of Duty's reach, right? It does say a lot about the game and, their company, honestly, really. So, yeah, I get it. I get why they're playing to this specific title and, everything else that follows with it. But honestly, I don't think we're going to see this series go to a specific platform. I think that would just be a poor decision. There's just been so many players across the platforms that it doesn't really make sense for them to do that anyways, and that would also make Microsoft kind of look like the bad guy. So I genuinely don't think that's going to happen. I think they are playing this up a bit more, and I feel like once we do see negotiations come back up, we're not going to see much of a discussion of like, hey, we're going to steal this title. I genuinely don't think that would be a smart move for the community and for the companies. So,
I'm still cracking up every time I read this, which has been a few times at this point, how you've got Sony trying to play the victim. The market leader is saying, we'll be crushed if this deal goes through. And our competitor is this big, bad, horrible monolith that they must be stopped. And then on the other side, you've got Microsoft saying, we're in last place. Our competitor is amazing. They're number 1. So it's just like, if you're one of these maniac fanboy zealots on the internet and your whole personality is tied to defending these companies, your head's exploding this week because you don't know what. You're like, wait, what? What do you mean they're saying that the other guy is better? Because they're both saying the other guy is better.
The puppy dog guys are out.
Yeah.
It's just like, ooh.
It's comical to me how they're arguing for each other's superiority in front of a regulatory body.
Now kiss.
Oh man. But yeah, it's to me it's asinine that Sony's case is even being taken seriously in this. And I know we're on an Xbox show and I'm saying that, but it's just like, again, $7.5 billion, but like Bethesda puts out more games than Activision does. None of them are as big, or actually one of them is as big as Call of Duty, but it only comes out every time Halley's Comet passes through the solar system.
But you can also get it on your fridge, so.
Good point. That's true. It's on every device.
Yeah.
Except PlayStation. No, I mean, who knows on that at this point, but yeah, I mean, Bethesda's game output is higher than Activision Blizzard's. Even if the dollars don't add up, and it's one publisher. Even if it is the biggest game, the biggest annual game, because the biggest game really is, of course, Grand Theft Auto. But or you could actually also say Minecraft. That's which Microsoft has and puts out on Sony platforms. But if nothing else, I think to sort of seriously button this up. To me, I want to get both of your reactions to this as well. What I take away from this is that Sony is really, really threatened by the prospect of this acquisition. And I say that because as I said, they've never contested any of Microsoft's other acquisitions. It'd be one thing if they took a complete... there's a term for this that I'm blanking out on, just trying to block everything. Obstructionist, that's it. If they took a complete obstructionist strategy to anything Microsoft tried to do, like just to try and make it as difficult on them as possible, even if they didn't necessarily win, like, oh, you want to acquire Playground Games? Well, we're going to file any kind of legal thing we can. Oh, you want to acquire Double Fine? Well, yeah, we used to do exclusive business with them. We're going to do anything we can to try and gum up the works for you on that. But no, Sony's never batted an eyelash at any other acquisition except for this one. So that tells me that Sony's pretty threatened by this from a financial perspective. Like they must believe that this will harm their bottom line at the end of the day. Like they clearly think, and specific to Call of Duty, because notice they haven't, in all of these these points they're raising with the regulatory bodies, they're not once mentioning Diablo, they're not once mentioning Overwatch. It's only Call of Duty is the only thing they keep bringing up. So Stella, do you agree with my thought on that, or do you have a different thought on Sony being threatened by this?
I mean, I agree with you, but I think this is just Sony realizing, like, oh shoot, we've been kind of behind on catching up with the modern world of what we can be doing. And I think they're just realizing, like, oh, this is a big acquisition. Again, like, of course, acquisitions have been happening all throughout the past year. And I think Sony's just like, wait, we could have been doing more with what we have. Well, until we play catch up, let's try and, like, you know, throw some fire on and then try to figure out what we're going to do next. Because I don't know. I think Sony is just realizing that they do need to come to terms that the gaming world has changed. Like, crossplay is everywhere, and if you don't have it, it only hurts you. So I think they're just, like, slowly catching up and realizing. So I really hope this is a wake-up call for them.
Miranda, your thoughts?
It's really hard to say because I think it ultimately comes down to the regulatory body's perspective on Call of Duty. In the UK specifically, this is the area we're specifically looking at this week, because there are other regulatory bodies looking at this,
including one in the United States that this apparently hasn't even found its way to.
Yeah, I was like, hello, we doing anything? Like, what do you guys think? And I think that's really what it comes down to. And what we've heard is, of course, Sony's case, and now it's Microsoft's rebuttal of saying that it's a misplaced concern, it's overblown, you know, that sort of things. And I think it's really hard to guess which way that will go, because Call of Duty is so present. It is a global phenomenon, whether you like it or not. And I have a hard time saying yes or no, honestly.
Bottom line it for me, both of you. Do you think, just based on what we've heard so far throughout all this entire soap opera, which, as we just alluded to, is probably nowhere near over because we still got to do this all again with the SEC here in the United States. Do you think this acquisition ultimately will be approved? Will Activision Blizzard be under Microsoft's control in 9 months from now? Stella?
I feel like there's a really strong possibility. Yeah.
Yes. Miranda?
I feel like in the UK, it's almost looking like a no, potentially, based on what I've read so far, because it is skewing so heavily about Call of Duty, and I think it's really hard to draw any eyes away from that. I think you can say, well, we're behind. It's like, okay, right. But Call of Duty is massive. So that's actually where I think makes most sense to me.
It could happen. I mean, it's
hard to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a yes. I do think at the end of the day, this is going to go through. Are there going to be stipulations or conditions attached to it? Maybe. I mean, I don't know if these regulatory bodies have the authority to do something like that, to sort of attach little, what's the word I want? Just little, not incentives for Sony, but just like little things to placate them. I don't know. But this is, at worst, fascinating. And I guess the last thing I would say too is, do you think Sony was caught off guard by this acquisition? Because I think they were. I think a lot of this I don't think they saw this coming at all. I know we can't know, right?
Hard,
we're just speculating, but...
Yeah, I would say I'd agree that it seems like they were caught off guard based on their responses. A quick note, too, I'm just reading this on Reuters, but it says that we're probably going to expect more from the UK regulatory board on their in-depth investigation, and they'll publish their findings in the new year.
Okay.
So we will have like an update on their deeper investigation beyond just like they looked at Call of Duty and Sony's complaints, and now Microsoft has rebuttal. Now they're doing more. But I do agree that it sounds like that they were probably caught off guard by this.
Stella, what do you think? You think Sony was ready for this, expecting this, or do you think they got caught with their pants down a little bit?
I think they got caught with their blue pants down a little bit. I mean, I think their response is very defensive. And again, I feel like this was their like, oh crap, like there's more that could be happening. We could have done more. So I feel like that's very much what their response was. So
yeah, I mean, part of the reason I think they were caught off guard is not only for what I just said, for just the sort of the way they've handled this, but also remember, we do know that Microsoft approached Activision after all of the, let's just call it legal trouble, particularly in the state of California, started for Activision. So if I'm Sony, I mean, I'm also not in business, so maybe I'm completely wrong, but I would think Sony would see, oh, there's this massive sexual harassment scandal, this massive workplace toxicity situation going on. Well, that's not, we don't have to worry about our competitor, our primary competitor, trying to swoop in and buy them. Who would buy them? Who would buy that in that condition? But Microsoft clearly saw a buy low opportunity. Even $69 billion is low, but yeah, I remain riveted to this. We've never seen a story like this in the games industry ever. There have been a lot of acquisitions. I mean, I remember when Activision and Blizzard merged, that was a huge story. And this is like the next level up from that is now that entire entity not just being acquired. Like if this had been Tencent or some VC, some venture capital firm just coming in and saying, you know what, we've got bajillions of dollars in the bank. We want to get a big foothold in the games industry. But the fact that it's a platform holder that's doing this, I think it just takes it into a completely unprecedented territory for acquisitions. And I'm going to microwave some more popcorn because I am enjoying the heck out of this saga right now. Next up this week, some sad news. I mean, we got to report the good with the bad here on this podcast. Microsoft has laid off hundreds of staff members across multiple departments, including Xbox. Sources told Insider that less than 1,000 staff were laid off across divisions thought to include Xbox, the forward-looking Microsoft Strategic Missions and Technology Organization, and the Office of the Chief Technology Officer. Studio Alpha, which is Microsoft's serious gaming initiative that focused on war gaming simulations, is also at risk, according to one source, alongside the Mission Expansion Cloud Government team. Microsoft's mission engineering team may also be affected, as its lead, Zach Kramer, sent an email to employees announcing that it would be, quote, deprioritizing work already underway. Quote, like all companies, we evaluate our business priorities on a regular basis and make structural adjustments accordingly, said a Microsoft spokesperson to Insider. That continued. We will continue to invest in our business and hire in key growth areas in the year ahead, end quote. Microsoft had announced back in July that it planned to lay off less than 1% of its workforce, which currently sits at around 180,000 people worldwide, putting approximately 1,800 at risk. It's unconfirmed if this most recent wave of layoffs is related to that July announcement. So, as far as us gamers, it does sound like gaming studios, by and large, were not affected by this, but of course, it's still awful news regardless. You are talking about people's livelihoods, their lives, their families. So our best wishes go out to those impacted, and hopefully nothing like this will happen again for a very long time, because Microsoft is I get that you've got to be strategic sometimes, but they're $1 trillion company their stock's only been going up, their revenue, everything about Microsoft is pointing up.
Yep.
So hopefully this is an aberration and nothing we'll see again anytime soon. Let's move on to a happier topic, and this will probably be the last topic of this show. And it is in regards to one of Microsoft's uncontested acquisitions, Obsidian Entertainment. Obsidian is not working on a new Fallout game for now, but its CEO, Fergus Urquhart, says, quote, "There's not a question about doing one if they were asked to." Speaking to DualShockers, Fergus said his studio would unquestionably work on a new Fallout if the opportunity arose, though he doesn't know if Bethesda would ever ask it to. Quote, "If we ever got the opportunity to make another Fallout game, we'd make it. There's not even a question of whether or not we would do it. It's just, will the opportunity arise? I hung around at Interplay for probably an extra year because I wanted to work on Fallout more. I love Fallout." End quote. Don't expect anything anytime soon. Wow, this is some old school Fallout we were looking at. This is this isn't the anniversary video, I think, but anyway, it is. It's the 25th anniversary of Fallout, which is why this came up in the first place. So, as part of that anniversary, Obsidian more or less confirmed that they're not making, as if Fergus's word was not good enough for you. They also took to Twitter on the Obsidian account, tweeting, "Happy 25th anniversary to the original Fallout, a franchise whose roots helped form us and a world we truly love." And then they, of course, to their credit and wisely, they included this in their tweet. "And before anyone asks, our plates are pretty full right now, so no, they're not making a Fallout game."
Well, they only have the Outer Worlds, Avowed, and then continuing development on Grounded.
Yep.
What else is there?
There's one more, and it comes out in a month. Pentiment, yes.
There we go.
Yeah, their plates are just a wee bit full, and obviously Pentiment's a small scale project that is wrapping up, and unlike Grounded, it seems like Pentiment is not going to be a game that's continually worked on.
But what about this? What if they do a small scale Fallout game? I would love some point and click adventures in Fallout universe from Obsidian. I'd love some other sort of like experimental small things. This is the thing, right? Like, I get that bigger companies often want these bigger grand experiences, but like Pentiment is the perfect example of, like, we don't know how long this game is, how big it is, but just something creative and different with your franchises and properties. Like, just do something small, little. That's cool and fun. Like, I love that. It's such a neat way to get to play in this world that you love, and an opportunity for them to develop something further beyond like the biggest blockbuster event, of the season, but still be something exciting, like a
Fallout Shelter.
Yeah. Save rate. Yeah, it's just, I love that. And I think it would be such a nice way to creatively stretch your muscles too at a game development studio. Like, I imagine, and a quiet secret hope is like, I would love to see the Coalition get more opportunities like that with Gears. Like, obviously next Gears is going to be a huge thing, but look at, like, guys, remember Fallout Shelter? That was so much fun. Like, we're watching clips of it right now. I remember at E3 we were all like, oh man, we got to download this now. And it was just such a great time. And I really wish we could see a little bit more of that happen with other studios, just because it's such a nice and unique moment to have.
While we're just on the subject, what little like mini bite-sized Gears game would you want to see?
Ooh, that's a good question. I have to brainstorm. Mine always goes to like, guys, what if we had like a farming sim with Marcus and his
I was literally just thinking like slice of life
with Marcus Phoenix.
Yeah, so just like we have like a young JD running around.
My effing tomatoes.
Like, oh my god. Like, the family's still together. He's going through some stuff, but he relieves his stress through farming, and you kind of just get like cool Gears lore and other analogs. Like, I think you could merge that in a really creative way to still be impactful to the series and carry weight, but also be a sort of different gameplay experience to get to know these characters further. And anyway,
it could be set at the end of Marcus Phoenix's life, when he's just an old man, like happily he's trying to put the past to bed and accept the trials and tribulations and the things he's done in his life, good and bad, and then the end of the game could be he dies.
So my thing is, can we just get some more time with Anya?
That too.
She just kind of got. But sorry, spoilers, I guess. But it's been two games already, guys.
Yeah, it's been a while.
2 games since that happened.
It's fine. Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? It's like there's all this blank space you can play with. And like, why not play with it in a weird way?
Stella, no Fallout for now from Obsidian, but they're clearly very, very open to it. What do you think the odds are that we do get a serious Fallout game from them down the road?
Probably way down the road, but I feel like probably we'll round back to it, right? We know that Fallout 5 is going to happen at some point as well, so I feel like it's just going to be
6, yeah.
It's going to be a long, long time, which is okay. I'll still wait. Fallout 4 still holds a very special place in my heart. I feel like it still holds up well, especially with all the mods and stuff that you can do now. So it's okay. It's fine. Outer Worlds 2 is also really fun, so I'm really looking forward to that, which kind of itches that Fallout need. I know it's not quite the same. It plays a little bit differently, but it's similar enough that it'll tide me over at least. Also, Grounded is really fun, and I'm really glad that they are putting a lot of resources into it, making sure that they are constantly updating it, making sure that everything's balanced and fixed, which is really nice to see that attention to detail there, because that Grounded is a community game that I could see really growing. So it makes me happy, and it's good that they are trying different things. So I'm glad that they're doing that as a company. So
yeah, I still need to fire up this final 1.0 release of Grounded.
It's so good. There's like so much story. It's so cool.
I was doing the Return to Monkey Island review.
Yeah.
And now the new Tales from the Borderlands review. So yeah, it's
that's fair.
I've got to find a spot for it. And now I'm like getting into Plague Tale Requiem. It's the happy fun time of year where there's
so much to play.
Choice paralysis. Yeah, too much to play.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I will say that to finish this topic off, I do think inevitably it's going to happen. There's going to be a major AAA Fallout game from Obsidian, because not only, number one, you've got Microsoft owns them both. So like there are no legal or business hurdles to clear whatsoever. It comes down simply to Todd Howard saying yes to Fergus and the team, which he's done before, and there's clearly a mutual respect and presumably friendship there, because New Vegas did great. It was a great game. So, but you're right, Stella. I think it would probably be after Fallout 5, way down the road, because you could say, well, maybe there's a chance that happens. That happens after Avowed. Maybe the Avowed team. Of course, more likely they move on to Avowed 2 if Avowed goes as well as you hope it does. And the Outer Worlds 2 team, whether there's going to be a third Outer Worlds game or whether they would move on to something else remains to be seen. But I do think Todd Howard probably would want Fallout 5 to be the next Fallout game. Nothing against what Obsidian would do, but I suspect that's the next thing he would want to see happen. So I do think there's a strong possibility, almost, and even I would go so far as to say that it's pretty probable, pretty likely, but it is going to be a while. So there is more Fallout in our future. That's the good news. That brings us to the end of Podcast Unlocked, episode 566. I'm on Twitter at DMC_Ryan. Again, my Tales from the Borderlands review will be up Thursday, which is probably by the time most of you are hearing this or watching this right now, since the show doesn't go up till later on Wednesday. So please check that out. Miranda.
You can find me at Havoc Rose, and that's Havoc with a K, on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and basically everywhere else. Someone did ask us to talk about Need for Speed and has asked many times, and so this is me talking about Need for Speed on Podcast Unlocked. Need for Speed!
When it comes out, I'll play it.
There you go. I don't know what else to say about it. I'm sorry.
It's very strange for a game in a major franchise like that to just get announced right before it drops, and there's I don't know if that usually that's a bad sign, but who knows? We'll see. Stella, take us home.
Yeah, sorry, there's something outside and I don't know what's going on.
Cart rolling by somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, speaking of Resident Evil-like stuff. Anyways, yeah, I am Parallax Stella everywhere. I am currently playing Overwatch and Apex on stream. But I want to look and do more games on the Xbox, so I guess just throw me some suggestions. But yeah, just doing a lot of stuff for IGN that will come out and I can talk about it after NDAs, after embargo's release, but like there's a lot right now, so.
Thank you to our super producer, Red, for making the show happen and being on point with that B-roll, as always, here on the video version. And with that, we will see you all